for translation.
Warhammer 40K Darktide is the newest title from Swedish developer Fatshark, most well known for Lead and Gold, Gangs of the Wild West, a western third-person shoe... I mean Vermintide. The game based on a little-known IP you may have heard of called Warhammer Age of Sigmar, owned by Games Workshop. Vermintide and its sequel Vermintide 2 are first-person hack-and-slash team survival games where you and a group of 3 people make your way through levels doing different objectives, while being attacked by giant ratmen known as Skaven. As you progress, you run into elite versions of said ratmen who will attempt to harm you in one way or another. Vermintide is like Left 4 Dead, except for each character is unique and they have their own loadout and abilities. Darktide is basically Vermintide 3, but set in Warhammer 40K instead, which is exactly like Warhammer Age of Sigmar, but 40,000 years in the future, with laser guns and chainswords instead of arrows and flintlock pistols. Now, before I get too deep into this review, I'd like to answer 2 questions that I know that some people who don't want to watch the entire video want to ask. Do I need to know 40k lore in order to play this game? And the answer to that is no. The game can be completely played without any idea what's going on lore-wise. Those who do understand the game will of course be excited when they see the words bolter gun show up in their inventory, but that's about all you'll miss out on if you're new to the setting. Is the game any good? And to that I can honestly say, without a doubt, it will be. In like 6 months. I know that's not a great answer, but I can honestly say the game has a lot of great elements going for it and a lot of promise. But sadly the game's been rushed out and is poorly optimized right now. If you're not the type who want to wait for a game to get patched up, then this game may not be for you. But before we get too far into that rabbit hole, let's talk a little bit about the game more in depth. The premise of the game is pretty straightforward. You're a Build-A-Bear prisoner on a ship headed for execution after doing one of 4 things that made the Emporium mad, which you'll pick during character creation, along with your class, what planet you're from, your voice, and what you did growing up. Most of it doesn't matter, except for one planet allows you to pick a different voice actor and lets you have catgirl colored eyes, so if you want to make an Emporium waifu of your dreams, you can do that.
What the fuck?
Of course, the big choice is your class, so I've made this handy little guide on what the classes do and what sort of personality might want to play them. Sharpshooter. Sharpshooters do 2 things. Shoot guns, also known as shining flashlights at things because you'll do fuck all for damage to anything in armor, and you throw grenades. Your class ability allows you to upgrade your flashlight's lumens, making it into a mag light, and all of your talents will allow you to overclock those flashlights or grenades, adding RGBs to them. You'll also find yourself using more ammo than anybody else does, which gives you a reason to pick up every ammo drop you see, so you can be at the top of the scoreboard that doesn't exist. You should play this class if you grew up on Xbox Live saying the N-word while playing Call of Duty, and now you play CSGO, still saying the N-word on every Discord you're on. Or if you don't care if you win or lose, as long as your name shows up the most in the kill feed. Zealots. Zealots are the Mormons of the 40k universe. You preach the good word of the Emperor, and you turn bad press into good press at any cost. You do more damage the lower your health is, so be sure to bleed for the Emperor and show him that you're a true believer. You also attack faster than any other class because you're always high on faith and dopamine. Your class ability allows you to charge deep into waves of enemies where you'll get instantly surrounded and go down like the good girl you are. You should play this class if you always play the female model in every video game, if you own a pair of cat ears and knee-high socks, or you want to be hurt while also being praised by Daddy Emperor. Ogryn. You're big, dumb, and full of health. You're a filthy abhuman mutant of the 40k universe, brutally strong, completely loyal, and extremely limited intellectually. Your role is a tank. Your hitboxes are large, your hurtboxes are larger, and you're the only class to have a shield. All of your weapons are close range, and your non-melee options always take too much time to deploy to be useful, but who needs a gun when you can beat people to death with a table leg and a slab of metal? You should play this class if Hassan Piker is your role model, or you want to know what it's like to not be 5'2" anymore, as the POV in the camera is higher for this class than any others. Psychers. Given power by the warp, a sort of 4th dimensional psychic... Alright, it's gonna take way too long to explain this in detail. Basically, you can explode people's heads and use psychic magic, but if you don't get rid of the energy that you build up by using your psychic abilities, the magic builds up too much and you pop your own head. I suggest playing this class if you're an autist who really likes wizards, or you're an autist who really likes Warhammer, or you're both. After picking your class, you need to make the second biggest choice of the game, which is your voice. A lot of the game's charm comes from the back and forth between the classes, and you're going to be hearing this voice a lot. A lot of the voice lines from Vermintide 2 are so iconic, they decided to make everybody in Darktide sound like Victor Saltpire.
I knew elves were weak, but you?
Or Robin Atkinson Downs from Saints Row 2 and 3.
The Morningstar wants to repurchase our little tarts.
Only I'm not even part of the guard any longer.
Most of the voices are fine, but sometimes you'll find some sort of stereotype in there like Voodoo Man.
I should have known the enforcers would not tolerate me forever.
Or if you pick the Ogre, you're just going to sound like a Russian.
Strange life.
Now that you've picked your class, looks, voice, and crime, you'll get into the actual story. You're to be executed for your crimes when Chaos soldiers attack the prison ship you're being held on. You're left to die, but escape. And on the way out, you save the life of the captain who was just about to kill you.
You said you were a loyal servant of the throne.
Holy Sigma!
Thankful for her life, she takes you back to the capital ship and puts you to work. Congratulations, you now work for the Inquisition, which is exactly what it sounds like. Your job is to help root out the potential Chaos infiltration on the planet Atoma Prime in the hive city Emporium. The Inquisition doesn't trust you much, so you're going to get sent out on your first mission in your space prison jumpsuit and basic gear that you found in your escape from prison. And that's pretty much it, which is where the first issue starts to show up. The plot of Darktide is by far the weakest element of the game. After the tutorial mission, you'll get a cutscene every couple levels where somebody tells you that they don't trust you and that maybe if you work harder they will. Every cutscene between 1 and 30 is almost identical. When fighting games have more of a backstory and plot built in, you know that there's something wrong. If this is your first 40k game, you're not going to find any explanation here. Zero gun descriptors, no logs to read about enemies, no plot or lore after missions and levels. Even an explanation of what stats do will be a mystery unless you look it up. Each mission will have a basic premise on why you're doing it, like decontaminate the water. That's it, which is absolutely fine for people who are here for the gameplay, but 40k fans are well-known lore nerds, and when you have new fans of the series trying to get into it, you would think that you would make it a priority to make sure you have as much lore as you possibly can built in. Thankfully, a lot of people are going to be able to overlook that for the gameplay. Darktide falls into whatever genre games like Left 4 Dead, World War Z, and Back 4 Blood are, but it has its own unique systems going on. As you survive missions, you'll gain trust, or level up. Getting more trust will allow you to unlock new requisition gear to take with you on missions. You'll get talent points to refine your playstyles, you'll unlock harder difficulties, and unlock better looking fits so you can stop looking like a scruffed crackhead and instead look like a crackhead decked out in Supreme. Starting off, none of this will matter though, as you'll have what seems to be not weapons at all. They'll be more like trash: a broken laser gun, a shovel, a dull knife, and a table leg. But don't worry, they'll work well enough. Survive enough missions and level up, and maybe they'll trust you with something that's a lot more punchy. Maybe you'll go from a shovel to a sword, or turn that sword into a chainsword. Maybe you can upgrade that busted flashlight to a Pink Floyd light show, or a gun that even shoots 75 caliber rocket-propelled rounds. The first few missions will go something like this. You and your team will get dropped in and have an overall objective, something like clean out the corruption in the break room. And as a team, you'll move forward, finding stopping point after stopping point before getting to the last objective. And on your way there, you'll find that all the people who used to live here are a little different now. They're full of maggots. But they're also made of paper, so treat them like a piñata full of rotting meat. Some of them have also become really corrupted by chaos, and are now elite or specialist units. Some elites are meant to do damage or to be tanky. Others are meant to disable you and your squad, so make sure you keep it a priority to keep these taken care of at all costs. Remember, at the core, this is a team game. Play it like a solo and you'll only have yourself to blame when everything goes wrong in a few seconds. Once you get to the end of the map, finish all of your tasks and take your pelican back home, you'll gain a little trust, maybe some loot, and you get to do it all over again. Some of you may have become aware of it by me talking about the gameplay loop, but there's sadly another issue that shows up here, which is lack of content. There are currently about 10 maps in the game before full release, 5 difficulty settings. Honestly, it's more like 3 because difficulty settings 1 and 2 are for new players and bots. But once you hit level 30, all you're doing is playing for better loot. And by the time you actually hit level cap, you will have played every map several times, which leaves grinding feeling very samey. I'm sure they'll constantly add maps, but especially early on, you're going to get the same missions over and over again, because maps are rotated out by timer, which is also connected to their difficulty. You want to run that assassination map that you like? Sadly, there's only a tier 5 and tier 1 of it up right now. Well, tough luck. Endgame is also sadly pretty lackluster. You'll have weekly missions that you can do that will give you a currency to allow you to buy from one shop, or you can run missions over and over again to get upgrade materials to upgrade the gear that you already have. but it's still a lot of work to not see very much reward at all. Even for the weeklies, it can take weeks or months even if you don't get good rolls in your shops. But besides gameplay, there are other reasons to stick around. Visually, this game does not disappoint. Where Vermintide had a large mix of open wooded areas, sprawling towns, giant wheat fields, castle sieges and snowstorms, rat burrows and dungeons, Darktide only has 3 things: darkness, steel, and smoke. You see, Fatshark understands what the core of the Emporium of Man is all about, and that's billions of poverty-stricken souls working together in sci-fi Milwaukee steel mills that are constantly growing larger around them like some sort of SCP. Every room feels like a mix of claustrophobic and unwelcoming. The color palette is exactly what you'd expect: gray, green, and red, which may upset some of you, but if you can get past the initial feelings, you begin to understand the vision. See, the Imperial's architecture style is called Imperial Gothic, and everything is exactly that. Because from tight narrow tunnels and walkways to massive churches and manufactoriums. Visually, the levels are some of the best 40k games have had to offer so far. Gone are the days of poorly rendered, perfectly lit areas showing a few Imperial seals and a skull here or there. Every part of the city feels like it was alive before chaos got here. People lived here, they worked here, and they died here. It's lousy with refuse, rubble, and filth like any slum would be, but it's also covered with religious imagery. For those who don't know much about 40k, hive cities are massive self-contained structures that reach millions of stories high, housing billions of people. Most people who grow up there will never see the sky or be able to go outside, and you start to believe that you're about to have the same fate. The hopelessness that fills you in these sprawling tight corridors make you feel like a rat in a maze. Looking up or down, all you see is endless darkness. The cities themselves are actually vast factories where thousands die daily to keep up with the imperial ties demanded of them. It's too big to see everything, but you're going to get the greatest hits while you're here. You're going to see the sewers, steel factories, favelas where all of the workers lived, markets, prisons, and massive coolant and water purification systems. Ah, industry. You mix that with the beautiful sound design. Darktide does something fantastic that a lot of games seem to forget, which is a perfect blend between information, mood, and silence. Most of the time in this game, you're going to hear this. But you're never going to hear music, unless... You see, music only starts playing when a horde is incoming, or you're at a survival part of a mission. The rest of the time you're hearing the world around you. You're hearing the incoming calls of elites spawning to murder you, the footsteps on the ground, and steel against flesh. When the music does kick in, the soundtrack is fantastic. Mr. Kid really knocked the ball out of the park on this. The mix between dark trance and gospel vibes makes you quickly understand exactly where you are and what the mood of every area is. Even if you don't play the game, I'd highly suggest checking out Jasper's OST on Fatshark's channel on YouTube. The mix of the soundtrack with the weapon sound design also is a perfect harmony of battle. Weapons sound exactly as you expect and want them to. The chainsaw's rev is perfect. And the guns are every guardsman's wet dream. There's a lot to love about this game. Its level and sound design, visceral combat, and the feel of the 40k weapons. There's nothing like cutting down a horde of plague cultists with a chainsword or gunning them down with a twin-link heavy stubber. Adding more range options to Vermintide gameplay and making things more grim and dark made this game feel so much different than its predecessors, but there are many glaring issues that are keeping me from saying that this game is an instant buy. Darktide was originally slated to come out in December and they pushed it back, which I have no issue with waiting. Sadly, the state of this game shows that they've rushed it for the holiday season, leaving a lot to be desired. By keeping the game in development for another 3 or 4 months longer, they could have fixed a lot of the issues that are currently plaguing the game, and adding more content to the game, making it feel a lot more finished. As it is, the social hub is almost pointless, especially if you compare it with Vermintide 2, which had a massive castle that you could explore, with jump puzzles and finding little bits of lore and dialogue between your characters and NPCs. And most of the key game systems, like crafting, haven't even been completed yet, which is a large part of the endgame. The game is buggy and poorly optimized. During my 2 weeks of pre-beta play, I crashed 45 times, most often in the middle of missions. Out of those 45 experiences, I was able to reconnect the match 34 times, but I did lose out on loot and experience the other 11 times, leaving my team stuck with a bot. This game struggled to maintain a stable 60 FPS despite running on a GTX 3060. This release it now and fix it later mindset of game devs have seen too many games die before they actually got fixed up. I understand that games are hard to make and that they cost a lot of money. Investors demand a return, but isn't it better to wait than end up with this? Warhammer 40K Darktide is a promising game that's been made by a studio that clearly loves the Warhammer IP though. Fatshark has promised to improve and expand on the game's content and fix performance issues. But, as things stand now, the game's level of polish may not merit a $40 price tag if what you're getting is essentially an ongoing beta test. If you're looking for Vermintide levels of polish, it's getting close, but it's not quite there. And I wouldn't blame anybody for wanting to hold off on the purchase, especially with so many games releasing for the holiday. And with that, I'm gonna get along, cause my dogs are barking. Because I'm at a standing desk. Bye.